I'm reviewing literally every single crypto project I've ever talked about on my channel. 77 different crypto tokens dating back to 2020. Going through what happened. If I still hold them or did I sell? Am I still bullish? Was it a profitable trade or did it end up ultimately being a loss? I'm going to be extremely transparent and go through everything, including obviously I'm going to be talking about all the tokens that I've been acquiring over the past couple of years for the 2025 bull run. And again, am I still holding them? Am I still bullish on them? Have they been profitable up to this point or not? All that kind of stuff and more. Keep in mind, all of this is just my personal thoughts about various different crypto projects that I've bought at one point and at one point was bullish on. None of this is investment advice. You should always do your own research. And my channel has been and always will be more of a journal documenting my own personal investment journey. Now, I tried my best to get literally every single token that I've talked about over the past 5 years into this video, but it's possible that I've missed some. But I did not skimp at all when it comes to the absolute juiciest possible drama that I could drum up from the past. We are definitely going to be talking about old names like TITANO, Time, Cake, Sphere. I made sure not to shy away from anything. And my hope with this video is that over time, you can see my growth and my progress as a trader. I was extremely degen back in 2021. I made a lot of money. I had the run of a lifetime, but I was extremely degen. And I've worked extremely hard to grow myself as an investor since then, to learn a lot more about the crypto space, about investing, about how to navigate this space since then. Again, this is my channel documenting my journey. I hope you see that journey through this video. This first leg of tokens that I'm going to go through is going to be all 2021 tokens. So these are going to be all older tokens that I probably don't hold today. That I'm going to go through first, just kind of covering again if I made money, I lost money, and kind of the outcomes of these tokens. First up is a legendary 2021 cycle trade, and that is Luna. I turned a small $760 investment into over $150,000 back in 2021 with my Luna trade. Along the way, I took out around $20,000 worth of profits from this trade, but ultimately my $150,000 price pot that came from this trade, I ended up losing when Luna utterly collapsed back in May of 2022. I did end up getting some additional funds from like vested Luna. If you guys remember what happened after the collapse, they launched like a new Luna token that was rewarded to previous investors as like a vested Luna token. I did end up making about $10,000 extra from selling that vested Luna token. So in total, I made around $30,000 from an initial $760 investment, which is amazing. That's obviously an amazing gain. Not quite as good as what it could have been, but definitely I can't complain. Second up is a couple different tokens. We have CRO, we have Atom, we have Engine, and we have DeFi Kingdoms. CRO and Engine were sold back in 2021 for a profit. DeFi Kingdoms wasn't really a token. It wasn't their jewel token that I was trading. It was more of a strategy that I did back then where I was like farming heroes and doing all this kind of stuff. I ended up closing that trade out. I made a slight profit. It wasn't anything crazy. Lastly, Atom, I ended up holding on to till about 2023. I sold it for a profit, but not nearly as much as I could have made had I sold it earlier. Some of you guys who followed me for a long time now know that I'm like a deep believer in the app chain thesis, this idea that like we'll have interoperable chains that work together. We'll have highly specialized chains. This has been like a belief of mine for a very long time. Originally, I really liked Atom's kind of vision for this. I thought they had a good ability to execute with this because they had Luna at the time, they had a Binance BNB chain. They had a ton of like really successful chains going for them. I held out a long time for this vision and for it to come to fruition. Nothing really came of it. At least no value accrual came around the Atom token. It felt like a lot of that value accrual kind of went to the Osmosis token. And so I eventually ended up capitulating. I sold at a slight profit, but again, not as much as I could have made had I sold it a lot sooner. Third up is definitely going to bring back some memories for some of you guys, and that's going to be Strong. I, to this day, still occasionally, randomly will get a comment or two where somebody will mention Strong and just how much they viscerally hated this trade. However, Strong was in fact overall a profitable trade for me. My original thesis that I laid out in my first Strong video was that I wasn't sure if it was going to survive for a long time, if it was going to end up becoming like Bitcoin miners or some cool thing, or if it was just going to fall apart and end up being a Ponzi. I wasn't sure which way it was going to ultimately go, but I was sure that it would at least survive the next 100 days. I had sat down and done the math, and as long as it could survive for 100 more days, I would turn a profit by doing the Strong investment, with obviously the hope that long-term it would keep going and I'd continue to make passive income, and this would ultimately turn out to be a good bet. And a big part of this is I had to be super disciplined on not compounding my nodes. That was like the big thing back then, is everyone was compounding their nodes. They had all these calculators and they're like, oh, if you compounded your nodes, eventually you can make $100,000 a month in passive income and all this kind of stuff. And I wasn't doing any of that because I was trying to play it the least risky possible. And my strategy was just to get my initial out as quick as possible. I ended up sticking to my plan. Besides the very first month, I did did compound one node, which was I made a big deal about in my second video talking about how it was a huge mistake. Besides that, I stuck to my plan. I took my initial out off the table and ended up making a profit with this trade. Ultimately, Strong did end up collapsing and turned out to be vaporware. And if you've been in crypto long enough, you'll find that most things kind of go this course, like where, they're a big project, a big deal for a little bit, but eventually they end up collapsing because they are vaporware and they never find product market fit, or they were just a stupid idea, or they were based on a narrative or a gimmick or something like that. Fourth up is KOGE. KOGE was an auto compounder vault that I talked about really when I first started my channel. It was one of the first videos I put up talking about crypto on my YouTube channel. Back then, DeFi was new. It was really exciting. This seemed like a really cool concept. I didn't understand the idea, or I wasn't smart enough to know back then that this was essentially just a fork of a more successful project on another chain. And this overall ended up being a loss of a trade for me. Fifth up is Olympus's OHM. And this was a trade I did back in 2021. And then ended up closing out, and then ended up reopening this trade in 2023. And I'll talk about both instances because they're very different kind of plays and kind of how I handled those and the outcomes of each. The first trade I did originally back in 2021, I was really, really strict with. My profit taking strategy back then was really simple. It was basically anytime a position doubled or tripled, I would take my initial off the table. And with that play specifically, I ended up selling my OHM after it doubled, and I ended up making a small profit. I think it's also worth noting that back then my channel was way smaller. I didn't get as many views, and OHM was like way too big of an asset for me to move. So it's not like I was like putting a video out about this thing, making it double in value and then selling. I wasn't doing that with anything. I have a really strict rule where like if I make a video about something, it causes it to skyrocket. I can't sell for at least a month, because I found that anytime that happens, that pump that I get from that video ends up wearing off by about 2 weeks. So about 2 weeks into that video, 2 weeks later, crypto changes fast if you've been in the space for any amount of time. Like 1 week, it could be like hyper bullish, and then the next week, everyone's calling for like the end of the cycle, okay? 2 weeks is a massive amount of time. And so within 2 weeks, usually if there's a pump, it fades. But I have like a very strict rule where I wait a total of 1 month before doing anything like that. And usually even then, like 99.9% of cases, even then, I'm not selling after a month. That's just like a strict rule I have, just to be like above board, set people's expectations, and just be really transparent. But yeah, regardless, my channel was way smaller back then, so I couldn't, even move the market if I wanted to back then. My second OHM trade was actually in 2023, so not that long. I mean, I guess that was 2 years ago, but like after the bull market, after we went to the bear market, I got back into OHM when a lot of people have just totally forgotten about OHM and that it existed. And this happened because Olympus released this thing called cooler loans. It was this really cool concept where basically you could take a loan out against your OHM for up to 95% loan to value ratio at the time when it initially came out. And I basically took a massive amount of capital, like a ridiculous amount of money. I used it to go buy GOM. I locked that GOM up in a cooler loan and then took out 95% of its value in DAI. And then I used that DAI to go invest into all these various alts. To me, at the time, this trade just felt insanely low risk. I was basically taking a 5% risk because I could take out 95% of the value and go reinvest it into like all these alts. I was basically taking a 5% risk on my capital. And based on like what OHM had done in the past, where I looked at the chart, like it had been basically up only over 2022, like the second half of 2022. It had been basically up only after they implemented this thing called RBS. And I thought, you know what, it's going to continue to go up. Maybe it won't go like do a 500% gain or anything like that. But if it continues to go up and does like 30% a year, 20% a year, or whatever, like I'll make a ton of money because of how much capital I put into this. And it's not like I'm losing that capital. I can still go invest it elsewhere via this loan. And the interest on the loan was like 0.5% a year. So it just felt like a really simple, obvious, easy play for me to make that didn't even feel very risky. And because I ended up making this play with just massive amounts of size, this has actually been one of my most successful plays of the bear market. And I'm currently up on this trade an insane $230,000, which is crazy. And just to be clear, when people hear that big number, just so you don't go rush into the cooler loan trade today, the loan to value ratio is wildly different today. Like that was a small window of time when it first launched, when you could get that really sweet loan to value ratio. But as OHM has appreciated in price, the loan to value ratio like drops in proportion somehow or something like that. So it's like less than 50% today. It's a lot more risk, a way different trade, way different setup. And I would have to totally reevaluate if that was something I was going to do today in the same way. I'm still in this trade today. I plan on continuing to hold it throughout the bull market, and I'm not planning on selling it anytime soon. Number 6 is Time Wonderland. This was another infamous trade. This one, like people know me for my like Time Wonderland videos back in the day. And this was just a massive, massive losing trade overall. It was just a horrible, horrible play. I was basically trying to mimic my success with OHM. So I did really well with OHM. It ended up being a great trade. And I thought, you know what, time was a fork of ohm. So I was like, man, maybe this is the next ohm-like trade, but I can get in even earlier. And to be fair, initially this trade did do pretty well. At one point I was up like 90% on this trade, but because I was waiting for that like full double before taking profit, I never ended up taking profit. It ended up retracing all those gains, and I ultimately ended up selling this trade at a 30% loss. Number 7 is a couple that kind of go along with this same trade. That's KLIMA, Gyro, Taichi, and Digits. These were all tokens that were a part of the Great Ohm Fork saga. It was basically like the meme coin mania back in Ponzi season of 2021. And as far as KLIMA, Gyro, Taichi, and Digits, I lost on every single one of them. In fact, I think every single one of these ended up ultimately going to zero. So when I lost on these ones, I took like a 99% or 100% in some cases loss on these plays. Number 8 is Cake. And my first original video on like Cake's auto compounder from way back in the day was actually one of the first videos that took me from basically a nobody on YouTube who was getting like, I was getting like 100 views per video or whatever, to gaining some traction and actually gaining a decent following on YouTube. I made quite a bit farming Cake initially, and actually was a really, really good trade at the start. Although later I piled in more capital when it was at a higher price point. That price point ended up coming down. And so I ended up sitting at a loss in Cake for literally years, for like forever. I kept my Cake. I kept like locking it, and I just kind of going for literally years. In fact, until just last year, until 2024, I was still holding my Cake. I ended up finally selling my Cake at a slight profit. Ultimately, what convinced me to sell was just the changing DEX landscape. Originally, my thesis behind Cake was like PancakeSwap has a massive amount of users. Even today, they still have a massive amount of users. But I became really just like hooked into like CowSwap and their intent-based architecture and just how much cheaper and better it was. And we're just seeing a lot of changes happening on the back end when it comes to like DEXs and swaps and all that kind of stuff. So over the years, I kind of just felt like Cake maybe was losing their moat. And I just wasn't quite sure how they would end up playing out directionally in the future. Like, were they going to be able to keep up with all these changes, or were they going to just kind of get outdated pretty rapidly? I didn't know, and so I just wanted to de-risk, get out of the trade, and put that capital elsewhere. Number 9 is Rome. And this was probably my single greatest loss ever. Honestly, maybe even my single greatest failure as a trader ever. Despite that, ironically, literally nobody ever brings this one up. Like, I get less hate for Rome than like just about anything else, despite the fact that it was, in my view, I mean, for sure, like it was my greatest loss, but it was also my greatest failure. Like, I was just an absolute idiot about this trade. But for some reason, nobody hates me for this trade. Like, when in my mind, the hate's somewhat justified on this one because it was just a massive failure on my part. Basically, from the moment I got into this trade, it was just down only. It was just literally, and I played this one, I put a lot of capital into this one. I was a big believer in this play, like a diehard like fanboy of Rome. And it was just a horrible, horrible trade, down only, never ended up doing anything, never ended up coming to fruition. I made multiple videos in this one just being like, I'm so excited about Rome. Once this hits, it's going to take off. Once this happens, it's going to take off. And it just never did. And then ultimately they ended up giving up. When things got toughest, they threw in the towel and liquidated their treasury. They didn't scam people. They at least gave, all the money in the treasury out to holders, which was nice. But it was just a huge, huge failure as a trade. It ended up being my single greatest loss ever. And to this day, I still think about what I could have done different to have avoided this trade and making these same mistakes. And this is actually one of the reasons I'm super, super big on position sizing and never allocating too much into a trade, no matter how much you believe into it. I talk about this all the time where I'm like, even if I believe like it's the perfect trade and there's no way it fails and it's going to go up 1,000,000,000% and like, I know I'm right. Even if I believe those things, I'll never invest more than 5% of my total portfolio into that trade, no matter what, because I've had to learn the hard way with trades like this, that you can deeply believe in something and be deeply wrong at the same time. So, and you just got to accept that. You got to accept that sometimes you will make mistakes, and that's why position sizing is key. Number 10 is TITANO. And to date, I get more hate for this play than any other play I've ever made. Ironically, as well, it's also my single best trade ever, having gone up a staggering 40,000% over a 6-month period. Originally with TITANO, I put in $3,000. And before I ever made a video, before I ever talked about it or mentioned it or put it out there publicly at all that I was invested into this project, it went from $3,000 over a month period to over $60,000. Unfortunately, after that, there was like some drama around the project. It ended up falling from $60,000 down to about $13,000 or $14,000. And that's the point that I ended up making a video. And in that first video, because I had experienced that crazy price collapse, I was actually nervous that it could continue collapsing. And so I put in there like a 2 or 3 minute, just like a whole rant on me talking about how you had to be really careful. You really need to do your own research. This thing could definitely go lower. It was like massive high risk. So to be extremely cautious if you were going to get into it, because again, just wasn't sure if it was going to continue to collapse from that point. The whole reason I made the video is because I just thought it was a crazy story. I put in $3,000 and it turned into $60,000. That's like a great YouTube kind of content video. I was really excited to put it out there because, I was sharing my journey. I was sharing what I was doing, and I was sharing how insane it was, how much money you could make investing in crypto when things went right. But the project didn't end up collapsing. In fact, over the next 6 months, that project ended up going up a staggering 40,000%, which again, if you've been in crypto for any amount of time, 6 months is an eternity in crypto. Like literally a couple weeks is an eternity in crypto. But for a project to continually go up for 6 months is just wild. That is a long, long time in crypto. Now, it was around this time when I ended up jumping on a call and talking with the team behind this project. And I ended up learning something that was deeply unsettling to me. And that was that the team was planning on keeping the 100,000% APY indefinitely. That is forever. They were going to keep the APY for this project at 100,000%. High APY originally came from OHM. It was basically used by the Olympus team as a bootstrapping mechanism to get the treasury kickstarted, bring in the initial funds, and get the momentum for the project going. However, the APY rapidly came down the more people that staked and the more time that passed. And a lot of people still criticize Olympus for the high APY thing, but it really isn't that different than something like an airdrop today. You're basically giving out a ton of free tokens to incentivize early users and adopters. In the case of airdrops, a ton of early users come, they use the product, they're maybe earning points, and then that's going to amount to some form of airdrop later down the line, and they're going to get free tokens and hopefully a lot of money. That's kind of the intent behind airdrops. With OHM, it's literally the same thing. It's just more transparent, the amount of tokens that they're going to earn, or, becoming an early adopter of this product. However, in both cases, the intent isn't for these token incentive mechanisms to go on indefinitely. Projects aren't just like printing massive amounts of tokens and airdropping again and again and again because they know that wouldn't work. It would dilute their supply and ultimately cause their project to collapse. In the same way, OHM didn't keep their APY at 100,000%. They rapidly depreciated it, and today it's literally at 0% APY. TITANO's team didn't understand this concept, and that's a major problem because over time, compounding kicks in. And basically, that'll cause the price of the token to just endlessly go down. And of course, when holders see the price of the token going down, that's going to cause them to get scared. They're going to sell their tokens, and it's going to cause a cascade effect where the price of the token eventually goes to literally zero. And obviously, as a massive holder, I tried to talk to the team about this and explain to them how this would play out. And I'll never forget when I did this, one of the team members ended up getting angry at me and saying, "Bro, why are you talking about math? What does crypto have to do with math, bro?" Basically, what he was saying was they didn't care about the math. They didn't care about the tokenomics. It was all about sentiment. It was all about marketing. It was all about sales. It was all about getting people into the token and pushing the price up. And that's all that they were concerned about. And when I found out that the team didn't understand basic math and economics, and their plan was basically just to milk every last dime they could from investors, I sold my tokens and called it out publicly, telling people exactly what they were doing and why that would ultimately cause the project to collapse. And I got a lot of people critiquing me, telling me that I should have just sold and not said a thing about it and shouldn't have spread this FUD and all this, bad nonsense about the project. But I personally felt like it was dishonorable and scammy not to call these things out. There was a lot of people that were following me that had first heard about this project from me. So for me to just quietly sell and not talk about these scammy things happening behind the scenes felt wrong to me. However, as the saying goes, no good deed goes unpunished. The team in the community attacked me and spread lies about me in a campaign to discredit what I had said. Basically, from these people's viewpoint, I was flooding their bags. I was endangering their net worth by talking ill of this project they were heavily invested into. A lot of people couldn't wrap their head around the contrast of me being really bullish about this project and then flipping to really bearish based on this new information. Basically, I became a threat to people's bags. I became a threat to people's livelihood by spreading this FUD and talking ill of this project that they were heavily invested into, that they wanted to go up. They didn't want to hear all this bad stuff. They wanted to hear good stuff about this project so that it would go higher, so they could make a ton of money and go live their dream. People did not end up listening or hearing what I had to say. Their campaign ended up working, and the price of TITANO over the next 2 weeks ended up doubling in value. While at the same time, I was receiving endless streams of death threats and people making these videos exposing Jesse for all his shady stuff. People were saying I was getting paid by competing projects to switch to that project and dump on this project. And none of this was true. All of this was completely made up. And it's been years since all of this, and today we have the luxury of seeing how things actually ended up playing out. And it ended exactly the way I said it would. Today, the project doesn't exist, and it literally went to zero. It does not take a genius to realize you cannot keep 100,000% APY indefinitely. And to compare, for example, Olympus did turn off their APY, and they have almost a $200 million treasury today, and their price has been basically up only for the last couple of years. Sphere, price-wise, has done poorly in the bear market, and they have gone down a lot, but they never quit building. They're still releasing products. And you can get paid around 30% in real yield staking your Sphere paid out in Polygon's POL token. Anyone who bought that token when I first made that video and then sold when I exposed what they were doing behind the scenes would have made an absolute fortune. Anyone, however, who listened to the team and all their lies and nonsense ended up bag holding all the way down to zero. And I would personally say having a project go up 40,000% over a 6-month period and then successfully nailing the time to exit, and people had weeks, literally weeks, to sell this token within that exit window, having heard my case about it in order to take that profit. All of that in my book qualifies as one of my single greatest trades of all time. All right, we're going to pick up the pace on some of these. Number 11 is going to be a few different ones that I tried. We have Helium miners, we have Pancake Swap NFTs, we have the Mine token, Big Time Land, Anchor, ILV, Tattoo, Game, Whale, and Affinity. Not all of them were 100% losses. It was like losses to varying degrees, but all these overall were losing plays. Number 12 is Stacks. Stacks was a Bitcoin layer 2 I got into in 2021. I honestly got really lucky with this play. I staked it back in 2021. I did it in like a weird, obscure wallet. I totally forgot about this play until like 2024. Obviously, like we've had ordinals and Bitcoin layer 2s kind of have this like huge takeoff moment. They were doing really good. People were talking about Stacks. I was like, oh my gosh, whatever happened to my Stacks? Ended up finding my wallet. It had been staked that whole time. I made a ton of money and it had done really, really good. And I sold that one at a profit. Number 13, again, is going to be a batch of tokens. We have Evergrow, Secret Network, and CND. All 2021 tokens I sold at a profit this time. So the first batch was selling at a loss. This was a batch of tokens I sold at a profit. Although none of these were like insane gains or anything. Number 14 is Sphere. This is another like super controversial one. I get a lot of drama about this one to this day. Although a lot of the drama from this one literally comes from that same time period. So Sphere is the one where people are accusing me. They're saying, hey, you're bullish on Sphere. You sold your TITANO. They paid you a ton of money to like switch sides or whatever. None of that's true. And I don't do any paid and sponsored content on my channel. None. That was a lie manufactured by the TITANO community, basically to discredit what I was saying negatively about them. None of it was true. I don't do any paid or sponsored content on my channel. This token did end up doing really well back in 2022 when it launched. It launched in like March or somewhere around there in 2022. It did really, really well for a season. It went up to like over 100 million market cap or something like that. There's a lot of people in the OC that got whitelist to this. They got in really early. They made an absolute fortune. There's one guy who had lost on a ton of different trades. He joined the OC. He was thinking there's no way he's going to make his money back. He got into this one trade and made everything he'd lost back in one fell swoop. So for some people, this is like one of their favorite things. Like they love me for this. So like they made so much money. However, just a few months later, we had like the Luna collapse, and then we had FTX after that. And like basically from that 100 million market cap or whatever, Sphere was like down only for a long period of time. Because of all the controversy and just how much I love the team, I never ended up selling any of my Sphere. I never ended up taking any profits when it hit 100 million. I held on to every single token. I literally did not sell a single token. And that's to date. So 3 years later, to date, I still have never sold a single Sphere token. I've been staking it in Wild Sphere, and I've been earning between 20 and 30% paid out in Polygon's POL token. As far as things go, the team has never stopped building. They're extremely competent when it comes to DeFi, but I have no idea what the future holds for this project. It makes up less than 1% of my portfolio. My plan is to make back my initial investment just by staking my Wild Sphere and getting that 30% POL. I'm really close to covering my initial investment, and then from then on, it'll just be profit, and I'll just see where it goes. I still have close to 50 tokens I need to go through, and this is going to be a lot quicker. The second half of the video is going to be a lot quicker, including I'm going to be diving into a lot of the current plays that I've been talking about this cycle that I've been really excited about. And I'm going to get to all of that in just a second, but really quick. The Obsidian Council is my private research community where I share monthly research, my entire portfolio, buy and sell alerts whenever I buy into a project, and more. We've had projects go up 1,100%. 1,200%, 1,500%, and some much more. I spend a lot of money to access a variety of newsletters, private groups, and more so I can get the best alpha in the market. And I share that alpha with the members of the Obsidian Council. Currently, the Obsidian Council is sold out and closed to new members. But if you want to join next time it opens up, make sure to join the waitlist in the description of this video. Okay, so that's every token that I could find or think of from last cycle. Again, I might be missing some, but I'm certainly not missing any of the really key, important, big, pivotal, high drama ones. Like I got all of those as far as I'm aware. Now we're going to jump into all the tokens I've gotten into after the 2021 cycle. Although in 2021, I made a fortune. I made a lot of money investing in crypto. I felt like I made also a lot of crucial big mistakes where I left a lot of money on the table, and I plan on not making those same mistakes again. I want to become the best trader I physically possible can. I spend like 3 hours every single morning listening to podcasts, audiobooks, etc. I'm constantly doing research and just trying to improve my ability as a crypto investor so I continually become better and better and better. This second batch of tokens that I'm about to talk about takes in a lot of the lessons I learned in that 2021 cycle and learns from them and improves on them. In that way, you'll notice a lot of these tokens are a lot less degen, but they're still the same kind of asymmetrical, high risk, high reward type plays. Number 15 is AKASH. I actually have a video coming out soon going into a full deep dive on the current state of AKASH. This is one of the first plays I got into for this 2025 bull cycle, and it's been insanely successful so far. I got into AKASH around $20 million in market cap all the way back in early 2023. And since then, it's gone as high as $1.4 billion in market cap, and I've been staking it, earning 17% annually. I still have a ton of conviction in AKASH, and I believe it can go significantly higher from here. Keep an eye out for that video if you want to learn more and kind of see my bull case for AKASH from this point going forward. Number 16 is going to be a couple. It's going to be MLM, LAI, Gloom, Frax, RLB, Future, GNS, all positions from the 2025 cycle. So the 2025 cycle would be anywhere from late 2022 all the way up until now. All positions that I took a loss on and eventually sold. None of these were particularly large positions. And in fact, they were all like 1% or less as far as position sizing. So like I stuck either 1% or less than 1% of my portfolio in these positions. They were pretty much low conviction bets. They ended up not working out. Number 17 is going to be the exact other side of the coin. So it's going to be GMX, GFI, Maker, Link, Render, Rune, Magic, Genome, RBN, ARB, all positions that I made gains on, but I also eventually ended up selling. These are things I got into way back in 2023. The metas have changed, a lot of the landscapes changed, and I'm trying to adapt with that, kind of prune old positions that I have, low conviction or no conviction in anymore, or maybe I needed that capital for other plays that I felt like had a higher potential outcome, and that's why these positions ended up getting sold. Some of them are like airdrops, like Arbitrum was never a token I actually bought into. That was an airdrop that I received, and for a little bit I was holding on to it to see what it did, but eventually ended up liquidating that position because I had other plays I wanted to make. Number 18 is Ethereum. This is what I would call a transitionary asset, and I got into this one all the way back in late 2022, 1 week from the bottom of the market. And back then I chose ETH over Bitcoin. So this is like there's two transitionary assets. You could have ETH or you can have Bitcoin, and the idea is like you're getting into this asset because you believe crypto as a whole is going to go up, and they're kind of like the index of the crypto space, right? When crypto as a whole goes up, Bitcoin goes up, or ETH goes up is the idea. And back then, my belief was that ETH was actually going to outpace Bitcoin. It's actually going to do better than Bitcoin. Again, this is pre the ETFs. This is pre a Bitcoin strategic reserve. This was just me looking at, the setup as far as fundamentals and saying, hey, we're going into the merge. ETH is going to potentially be deflationary at that point. The emissions are going to drop radically. And if you look at a Bitcoin halving where, the emissions are cut in half, well, ETH was basically going to get its emissions cut in by 99%. And so the same concept was that maybe potentially that leads to a significantly better performance versus Bitcoin. Also, along with that, the plan was to take my ETH and use it to airdrop farm. So I figured while at the same time that I was doing this, I could also earn yield on my ETH as well as earn airdrops on my ETH. So it just net, it seemed like the best play. Overall, I ended up being wrong about this. Bitcoin wildly outperformed ETH. Although when you include the airdrops, the difference isn't massively substantial, especially considering I sold off my ETH as I was jumping into alt positions. So it's not like I just held my ETH till, to this day. I took that ETH and I used, it's a transitionary asset. I used it to allocate into alts because back then I didn't know what alts I was going to be allocating into. I felt like I didn't want to rush into a bunch of alt positions, but I wanted to take my time slowly picking out positions and allocating to the right ones as the market continued to develop. That's what I did. I still do hold some ETH that accounts for around 2.5% of my portfolio. But obviously the long-term goal over the cycle is that all of that ETH would get eventually sold off and allocated into alts, for alt season. Overall, of course, I did make a small fortune holding ETH. It's basically been up only since late 2022. I've made a lot of money because I put a lot of money in there initially. I liquidated my entire net worth. I put it all into crypto at the time. And so it has been a great play. It's just I could have optimized and done it better, but I have no regrets. Very few people actually jumped in at the bottom of the market, and very few people did that at size where they're like putting their whole net worth into crypto. So I've done excellent and done very well since then. And, again, no regret. Number 19 is Index. Index is a token that I'm super bullish on. I haven't talked a lot about it recently. It's still a token that I hold. I haven't sold any of my Index. I'm still bullish on it. In fact, I've actually only added to this position. So over time, I've added more money into Index, but I haven't sold any. Currently, I'm sitting at around break even on Index, but that mostly comes from like at higher prices. I was allocating more money into Index. So if you average out my buy-in price, it's about even. But if you're accounting for just like when I first started getting bullish and talking about it, it's up substantially since then. I do plan on eventually doing some sort of update for Index at some point. Number 20 is PICA. This was an absolute disaster of a trade and a pretty decent loss for me, sitting at around 92% loss. Luckily, I didn't allocate too much capital into this play, so it didn't represent a massive loss, but it still hurts to lose on any position 92%. Overall, this was just a disaster. Number 21 is again going to be a batch of tokens, and that's going to be Sol, Osmo, Vita, LPT, Cryo, OP, and IMX. All these are going to be winning tokens, so tokens that are sitting in profit that I haven't sold from the 2025 cycle era. And just to clarify, so I'm not misrepresenting this in any way, Sol was only a tiny position. I only put a tiny amount into this play. I got in at the right time. It was like under $15 when I became bullish on this thing. I just didn't allocate to it in size because it wasn't a high conviction play. It was a very low conviction play. And that ended up being a massive mistake because we do know what happened next. Sol went on an absolute the run of a lifetime, and it has done substantially well since then. Osmo, Vita, and LPT were also tiny positions. They all ended up doing well, but they weren't like high conviction bets by any means. Cryo is a tiny position that's done insanely well. And IMX and OP were larger positions, but it's because they're like category transitionary assets in my mind. It's like when I want to allocate into crypto gaming, but I don't know what token specifically to allocate into, I'll just put it into IMX and then I'll sell off that IMX to allocate it into like various crypto gaming tokens. And then OP is like a ETH beta. So if I'm like feeling a little bit more risky, it's like, I don't want to allocate into ETH. I'll allocate into OP and then I'll sell off that OP to allocate into alts. So that's why they're a little bit larger positions. Number 22 is going to be the opposite of that. So it's going to be a batch of tokens that I still hold, but are currently sitting at a loss. You have Wi-Fi, Ori, Shrap, PERC, and Arbius. Wi-Fi was a tiny position. I got into that based off it's like the syndicator video back in the day. At times, that position has like been massive. Like it went up a ton for like a short period of time, but then it like completely retraced, now sitting at a loss. Ori is another tiny position. That one's pretty much been down only since the moment I got into it. I still can't bring myself to sell it though, because I don't know, it's like a Pokemon-like game on Solana. I don't know. That one's, I always look at the game and I look at like what they're building. It's not just the token for the game, but the whole ecosystem. I just never could bring myself to sell it. I don't know why, but I'm still holding that token. Shrap did really well for like a second there, but then they had like this old lawsuit. It's been like down since then. And that's gone down substantially. That one hasn't done good. But again, I haven't been able to sell it because I still like the concept. All the fundamentals that originally made me invest are still there. So I'm still bullish on it. PERC from the original time I got into it has done really well, but I put in a lot more when it was a lot higher. And it's since gone down. It's had like a major correction. That would be one that I expect to do well. Again, given an alt season or given a crypto gaming rotation, not before that, just because it's just so small and so unknown. I just don't see it gaining any traction without an alt season or a crypto gaming rotation. So really with all these things, that's what I'm waiting for. Alt season, crypto gaming rotation. Then we'll see how they fly, see if they do well. I haven't sold any. I don't plan on selling any of those for the time being. Most of them are like lower conviction. I would say PERC is like more of a mid conviction bet. Lastly, you have Arbius, which is like a mid to high conviction bet based on their airdrops and all that kind of stuff. But I got into it right before this entire market collapse. So like at the height of this like mini bull run after like Trump winning the election, that's when I got into Arbius. So it's down substantially from that height, but so is like everything. Like everything is down substantially from that height. So that position hasn't done good, but it's also a newer position. So I'll give it time. I've had this happen with other positions where I got in. Maybe it wasn't the perfect, me timing the market, but overall I ended up doing really well because the market ended up turning around, and that it did end up being a good position. So we'll see how that one plays out with time. Number 23 is Butterfly, now rebranded to DINERO. This one has done insanely well, but it is one that like fluctuates all the time. Like I'll be sitting at like a massive loss, and then like literally 2 days later, it's like a massive gain. And then literally 2 days later, it's like a massive loss. I don't even understand that. I don't understand why this one flips back and forth so much. But I made a ton of money staking it. So I was really originally staking the Butterfly, made a ton of money with that. Like the yield was pretty high on that, and I just kind of kept redepositing it and like restaking it. And then once they rebranded to DINERO, I also staked that. I'm currently sitting up around $50,000 on this position. So I'm doing really good currently on this position, still staking it, still earning yield on it. And that $50,000 isn't even accounting the yield. So I don't even know what I'm up with the yield as well. But overall, this has been a great position. I plan on holding it long term. It's more of like a geeky DeFi position, but it's been doing great. Number 24 is DOPEX. Again, another a disaster of a trade. This one just did not play out as I expected. It was like crypto options, really bullish on that, like thinking like this could be a new paradigm, a new shift. Every crypto option play that I've ever done has not worked out the way I was hoping it would. DOPEX is no exception. This one went down over 90%. I jumped into it in early 2023 and I ended up selling what I could left of it in late 2024. Number 25 is AKASH. AKASH is a bigger win for me because I piled a lot more capital into this play. It's a little bit of a safer play because it's like a serious team building a serious project that's widely used. Everyone loves it, that kind of thing. To date with this play, I've made almost $100,000. I'm still really bullish on Intense and what they're building with it. And I think this could do really well given an alt season. Number 26 is PRISMA. And this was actually one of my rare high conviction plays that ended up doing horribly. I played this one with size. I allocated a lot of capital into this play. Again, no more than 5%. But at the time, I think it was close to that. It was like 4.5%, somewhere around there. And it ended up ultimately going down 85%. I still hold this position. I cannot bring myself to sell it. I think about this position all the time and what went wrong, what I could have done to avoid this play. I still can't figure that out. Like to date, looking at the position from a lot of angles, the conclusion I've actually come to, and I don't know if this is right, I still try to think about it because maybe I'm wrong about this. The conclusion I come to is that I've came to is that there's nothing I could have changed. It's like just one of those things where it looked good. It looked like a good play, looked like a good bet. I invested into it and it just didn't work out. And I know that there are plays like that. There are plays where it's just like on paper and you do your research, you do a good job, but there's nothing you miss. It just doesn't end up working out. And that's just that's going to be how some plays are. And so the one thing I have taken away from this is even the best plays, even the double ace hand. I talk about poker a lot in crypto. The perfect starting hand doesn't mean you're going to win. Doesn't mean that when the tables get laid out or the cards get laid out on the table, that it's going to be in your favor. And you have to accept that there's some level of randomness and some level of like just unknown when it comes to every trade. And that's, again, why position sizing is so key. Number 27 is PENDLE. This was honestly a mid-conviction play. I did not have a ton of conviction in PENDLE, but it has done astronomically good. My only regret with this play is just not allocating more capital into it. Number 28 is my meme coin plays, Goon and Baba. As you guys know, I don't like playing around with meme coins very much. I feel like it's more akin to like Yahtzee than like some complex strategy game. It's more like gambling or a lotto ticket. I don't like the randomness in it. I like to like win based on strategy or like have a plan to win, not just like throw money at something and hope I win. But still, I do have two meme coin plays that I have jumped into before. I got into Goon. I threw a couple $1,000s. At one point, it was as high as like a couple $1 million on paper. As you guys know, it doesn't actually work like that. The liquidity for that play wasn't actually at a couple $1 million. Like the most I could have cashed out for was like maybe 100K or something like that at the PICA top. I didn't end up selling at the PICA top or anything like that. I still hold this position to date. My second play I got into was Baba on Solana. This is just one I thought was funny. I wanted to get some sort of Solana meme exposure. More kind of just like playing in the trenches a little bit, learning about it. And I just like to try a lot of things on chain and just continually learn. This one did do kind of decent for a while. It went up to like a 200 or 300K market cap. Maybe it went higher. I don't remember. But then it kind of came back down. Hasn't done like anything incredible. I still hold all my tokens and I've been doing like an AI music side project with it, literally just for fun. I haven't really even talked about this on my channel or anything like that, but I've been like making AI albums like under Baba's name on Spotify. You can literally go listen to these on Spotify. It's all AI generated. Super cool. So I have 2 albums out. I'll put a link in the description of this video. If I didn't, somebody comment and remind me to do that. But I'll put a link. Go check out the albums. They're actually pretty awesome. I plan on continuing that experiment over time and just kind of having fun with it. Nothing crazy, nothing wild or anything like that. But I have that one as well. By the way, their K-pop albums, I don't know why. Originally, I did that because I felt like the Baba meme was like more kind of like, had like a K-pop-y feel. I don't know why. So I kind of went with like AI generated K-pop albums. I don't know. It's been fun. It's really cool. And I think some of you guys will be shocked how good the albums are, how good AI generated songs can sound. Number 29 is Polygon's Pol token. My gosh, this video is getting so long. I've been recording this for forever. Polygon's Pol token. This has been a high conviction play for me, like as like a sub transitionary asset that has not done very well. My conviction comes from the tech side of things. The ag layer is actually amazing. I'm a deep believer in the app chain thesis, in interoperability. I think this is going to happen. Ag layer is like one of the best pieces of tech to make this happen. But so far, just like no dice. This has been just a massive dud of a trade. In fact, this cycle, this has been my single biggest loss. I'm still holding, I'm still staking for airdrops, and we'll see how this one plays out. Number 30 is Lake. I bought this one forever ago. Again, this was one based off one of those syndicator videos where like recommended it. I bought like a tiny bit, super low conviction. I had no idea why I owned this for a while. It did really, really good. It went like massively, ran up for a period. Then it went all the way back down and I sold it. I was done with it. And then I had this like VC friend that's really big on Lake, kept talking about it. DeSci kind of hit a narrative. People were excited about DeSci again. So I ended up buying back into Lake after doing some research. They launched this whole like pump.science, kind of pump.fund like marketplace, but for launching science projects. It just sounded cool. They're tapping into like DeSci, AI, like a lot of good narratives. So I ended up buying back into Lake just recently. I haven't talked about it or done much content on it yet, but I'm going to do deeper dives on it and talk about it a little bit more in the future at some point. But yeah, number 31 is my final batch of tokens. And these are going to be all tokens that are sitting in profit that I'm still holding that are kind of like my highest conviction bets of this cycle. That includes WINR, RSC, COW, UNA, and SFG. And actually to clarify, when I originally was writing out this video, WINR was sitting in profit, but there was this massive whale sold off a ton. It's now sitting at a loss for me as of right now. And that has to do with the fact that I piled onto this position. I just keep adding to this position. I haven't sold any. I just keep adding to it. So I added more at like a higher price point, and that's why I'm currently sitting at a loss. But besides WINR, the rest of this batch is sitting in profit, and in some cases, extreme profit. For example, with RSC, I'm currently up $220,000. That has just been a massive like titan of a play. And the others have similarly impressive gains. They have been good. So far, I've been mostly hitting with my high conviction bets. Again, I've been off with some of them. I'm still very, very bullish on WINR, but so far that hasn't played out yet, but I believe it will. And then PRISMA was like a high conviction bet that just was an absolute disaster, did not play it at all. But the majority of them have played out so far really, really well. And we haven't even had an alt season. So I think a lot of these things are going to go a lot higher from here. I'm currently not selling any of these tokens. In fact, the only thing I'm planning on doing is adding more to these positions, which I have been all bear market long for most of these positions, adding more and more and more. Because they're high conviction bets for me. So anytime my portfolio moves up and I'm sitting back under 5%, I will add more to these positions, pushing them higher if I can. In some cases, like RSC, like it'll grow to over 5%. And so then I kind of get locked out of adding more into that position. But any of them that dip, I am adding more any chance I can because these are high conviction bets for me. As you can see, over the past 5 years, I've had some major losses and I've had some major wins. Not everything that I've jumped into has succeeded. In fact, some of them have been disastrous trades. But overall, my wins far outweigh my losses, and I've made a small fortune over the past 5 years despite those losses. Oftentimes, the difference between winning and losing when it comes to investing has to do with your strategy and your position sizing and how you take profits, etc. Out of all these tokens, I wasn't paid to promote a single one. I didn't do any scammy pump and dump tactics and all that nonsense. I have always been upfront and transparent about everything, and I've remained consistent and never telling anyone to buy the tokens that I'm jumping into because I know it's a lot more complicated than just that. I know it actually takes strategy and understanding what you're doing if you want to succeed, because not every trade is just like black and white. It's not every trade is simple. Some of these trades can be quite complicated, and you have to know and have a strategy if you want to ultimately succeed. Overall, I have learned a ton over the past 5 years. I literally want to be the best investor I physically possibly can be. And I try to take every mistake, every failure that I have, I try to learn from it and improve so that I don't make those same mistakes again. And I'm continually just leveling up and getting better and better over time. I like to think of it like playing a sport, right? Like we're like learning to catch a ball like as a kid, right? Learning to catch a ball as a kid is you're getting a ball thrown to you and you're missing and not catching that ball over and over again. But each time you learn a little bit more about how to catch that ball until eventually you are catching it. And you maybe 1 out of 3 times, then 1 out of 2 times, then every single time. The path to success is often paved with a lot of failure along the way. And even though I've learned a lot, I'm not perfect. And I'll still continue to have failures and trades that just don't work out. If I could get every trade right, if every trade I got into made money, that would be I'd be the best trader on the face of the planet. Nobody is that good. Investing is very, very hard, and you got to put in the work and get good if you want to ultimately succeed. However, if you do put in that work and you do get good at investing, the gains you can make are astronomical, like insane. It blows my mind that I will have some trades that make me more money than I used to make in a year, like 5 times over. Like, to me, that is crazy. But that is a result of years and years of work and getting good at this and learning through my failures and my mistakes and having to learn a lot of hard lessons the hard way. And while so far in this 2025 cycle, I've done really well. And in the 2021 cycle, I made a fortune. Originally in my first cycle in 2017, I made a lot of money, but then I lost everything. I literally lost everything I made. And then I went well under my initial investment, and it was just a huge disaster. So I had to learn the hard way the first time I got into crypto, not to just blindly follow other people and actually learn how to invest myself, because that's what I was doing in 2017. I was copying other people's trades. I was listening to what other people told me was a good idea to invest in, told me it was a good technology, and this is a good idea. This is going to change the world. I was putting my money into it. It did go up. I didn't know how to sell. I didn't know how to take profits. I was over allocating to certain positions. I didn't understand any of that stuff. I ended up losing all my money, learned the hard way, did a lot better in 2021 because I put in like basic principles of like taking profit and all that kind of stuff. And I learned a lot more about the space and investing. And hopefully my goal is to do substantially well in 2025. And so far I have. So far in the bear market, I've made more money than I made all last bull market, which is crazy to me. But I'm also starting at a lot higher capital position. I started with a lot more capital this cycle over. And I'm planning, and my hope is like during the bull run, if it ever comes, if we ever get all season a bull run, to make wildly more money. Like, that's a lot of my portfolio is positioned for that bull run. That's the hope. That's the dream. That's the goal. We'll see how it plays out. As always, now this is investment advice. You should literally always do your research. I hope this video has taught you that at a bare minimum. Make sure to sign up for my free weekly crypto newsletter. It's mostly just all my content I put out each week in an easy email so you don't miss it. But occasionally I drop some other cool stuff in there as well, including sometimes I mention things I'm buying before I ever talk about it on my YouTube channel. Also, if you really want to dive deep, make sure to check out my weekly podcast, the 1 to 1 Million Podcast. I interview projects, talk about the markets, and interview various traders and experts in the crypto space. If you have any questions or comments or anything to add, or if somehow I missed a position or something, let me know in the comments below. If this video is helpful, make sure to hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the little bell next to it to be notified each time I release a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.